Welcome to Rise Fuel, where we uncover stories of ordinary people standing up to extraordinary injustice. In today's feature, one man's peaceful move to the countryside takes a dark turn when a self-appointed authority launches a relentless campaign of harassment, deception, and sabotage, all for the sake of a secret real estate scheme. But what she didn't count on was the power of truth, a tight-knit community, and the quiet strength of someone who refused to back down. This isn't just a story about property. It's about power, manipulation, and what happens when lies are exposed in broad daylight. This is the concrete trap. Someone deliberately filled my water tank with concrete, not out of pure malice. Well, maybe a little, but because my new neighbor, Deborah Skinner, decided it didn't fit the aesthetic of the neighborhood, a neighborhood she seems to govern from her front porch. Armed with a fake HOA and a stack of suspiciously official-looking documents, I moved to rural Nebraska to grow native wildflowers, not to get dragged into a turf war over a decades-old a chunk of concrete. She had no clue what kind of mess her little stunt would ignite. Ever had a neighbor treat your land like it's part of their personal Sims save file? Tell me in the comments, especially if it spiraled longer than they expected. I'm Wade Barnes. 6 months ago, I thought I was making the best decision of my 35-year-old life. After a decade spent designing cookie-cutter landscaping projects for corporate clients in Denver, I finally scraped together enough savings to buy my dream property, 10 acres of Nebraska farmland and a cozy 1960s farmhouse. The Miller family had owned the land for generations, and their children were eager to sell to someone who'd genuinely appreciate it. It came with rolling hills, old-growth oaks, and a huge concrete water tank, likely a relic of the property's farming days. I assumed it was an old irrigation reservoir, about the size of a small pool and nearly 8 feet deep, perfect for collecting rainwater for my drought-tolerant plantings. Enter Deborah Skinner, a one-woman regulatory storm. It was a Tuesday in late September. I was kneeling in what would soon become my wildflower meadow, marking seedling spots, when I heard gravel crunching. I looked up to see a woman in her late 30s striding toward me with the authority of a school principal and a clipboard cocked like a weapon. "Are you the new owner?" she asked, barely waiting for a reply. "I'm Deborah Skinner, president of the Millbrook Rural Association. We need to talk about some serious issues concerning your property." I stood, brushing off my jeans and offering a polite smile. "Hi, I'm Wade Barnes. Nice to meet you. What kind of issues?" But Deborah wasn't interested in chit-chat. She pointed at the water tank like she was revealing a crime scene. "That tank," she said gravely, "is an unregulated aquatic hazard. It could breed mosquitoes or, worse, visual disharmony." I blinked, unsure if she was serious. The tank looked exactly as it had since I moved in, solid, weathered, and perfectly functional. "Sorry, I don't follow," I said. "It's just an old reservoir. I'm planning to use it for rainwater collection." Her eyes narrowed. "Mr. Barnes, that tank represents an unauthorized water storage facility, never inspected or brought up to code. As president of the association, it's my duty to ensure all modifications follow community regulations." She handed me a stack of rules, clearly photocopied too many times. Page after page outlined restrictions on paint colors, lawn height, and buried somewhere on page 15 vague language about unsanctioned water features. I glanced up and caught her eyeing the tank with something beyond disapproval, more like calculation. "Mrs. Skinner," I said, "I appreciate your concern, but that tank's been here for 40 years. If it were dangerous, someone would have flagged it long ago." Her answer was swift. "Past ownership is irrelevant. You are now responsible for ensuring compliance. Either have the tank inspected for structural and environmental safety, or remove it entirely. If not, we'll be forced to take further action." She turned, then added with a saccharine smile, "I trust you'll do the right thing. We take community safety very seriously here." As she walked back to her gleaming SUV, I couldn't shake the feeling this wasn't about safety at all, and I had no idea how right I was. Naturally, I turned to Google. The Millbrook Rural Association didn't exist. No website, number, county records, not even a 1-star Yelp review. It existed only in Deborah's imagination and on her forged letterhead. This should have been reassuring. Instead, it made me more anxious. People who invent their own authority are usually the ones you need to watch most closely. So I went down the road to ask my nearest neighbor, Frank Davis. His place was a quarter-mile away, a classic farmhouse, with well-kept sheds and fences, the kind of setup that spoke of generations of practical experience. Frank was in his late 50s, built like someone who did real work, and greeted me with cautious friendliness. "You must be the new guy from the Miller place." "Wade, right. How's it going?" I told him about my run-in with Deborah and showed him the stack of regulations. His face darkened as he read Deborah's. "Persistent," he said. "Moved here about 12 years ago. Used to work in county records. Now she uses that knowledge to play HOA president. Most of what she hands out isn't legally binding, but she makes life hell for anyone who doesn't go along." "What kind of hell?" Frank sighed. "She'll call the county if your lawn's too long. Report you for noise, smells, whatever. Most folks just comply. It's easier than dealing with her." He paused. As for that tank, just be careful. It's important to folks around here, more than you might think. Before I could ask why, Frank stood up and said he had chores. But as I left, he called after me, "That wildflower garden sounds nice. Wait, I hope you get to finish it." Something in his voice said he wasn't sure I would. In the following days, Deborah escalated. Her third complaint claimed my compost pile was a biohazard. She declared my seedlings a zoning violation. But what really stung was her attempt to shut down my entire ecological project. Somehow she'd gotten her hands on my plans and declared them inconsistent with community values. She demanded detailed environmental assessments, ones that would cost me thousands and delay the garden for months. The water tank saga intensified too. Deborah's second notice insisted I hire professionals to assess its condition, water quality, and legal standing, a $15,000 process. She even gave me a list of approved experts, all suspiciously linked to a development firm she was cozy with on LinkedIn. Then I noticed something odd. While mapping out my rain gardens, I found that the tank was connected to old but functional underground pipes extending beyond my fence line. It was more than just a water reservoir. When I mentioned this to Frank, his reaction was immediate. "And nervous. That tank's been important to folks for a long time," he said quietly. "More than you might realize." And then he changed the subject. Deborah's final ultimatum arrived on a Friday. She marched up my steps in a formal blazer, flashing a badge that looked like it came from a craft store. "Mr. Barnes, you are now in violation of community water safety standards," she announced. "If immediate action isn't taken, we will take measures to protect the public." When I asked what measures meant, she replied, "By any means required." Her tone made it clear she wasn't bluffing. After 2 more weeks of nonsense, I snapped. I compiled a stack of state and county laws, confirmed that the Millbrook Rural Association had no legal standing, and sent Deborah a polite but direct email. I explained her regulations were unenforceable and that I wouldn't spend thousands complying with made-up policies. Her response: "A furious 7:30 a.m. phone call. If you won't act voluntarily, I'll involve the authorities." She snapped and hung up. By Thursday, a county inspector was in my driveway. "Honestly, Wade," he said as we walked around, "this all seems exaggerated. The tank's fine. No violations here." That's when Deborah appeared, armed with aerial photos, water studies, and legal jargon. She performed like she was presenting at a zoning tribunal. The inspector listened politely, then cut her off. "Ma'am, unless you have actual test results or documented issues, there's nothing I can cite here." After he left, Deborah lingered. "This community was here before you, and it'll be here long after you're gone," she said. It wasn't about safety. It never was. It was about control. And as the town started turning colder toward me, fewer waves, more whispers, I realized she was playing a much longer game. When I mentioned how isolated I was beginning to feel, Frank nodded sympathetically, but the worry on his face was real. "Wade," he said slowly, "I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but Deborah, she's got a long memory, and she's patient. Maybe there's a compromise you could find." I appreciated his concern. I really did. But I also knew that giving in now would only open the door to more demands later. Sometimes, standing up to a bully means accepting that things are going to get worse before they get better. I just didn't realize how much worse things were about to get. That Friday morning, I woke up at 5:30 to the growl of heavy machinery crawling up my gravel driveway. Through the bedroom window, I saw the unmistakable silhouette of a concrete mixer truck, followed by a crew of workers still groggy and confused. I pulled on some clothes and rushed outside, dread rising in my chest with every step. What I saw in my backyard made me question whether I was still asleep, trapped in the kind of fever dream you wake from with your heart racing. A massive concrete truck was parked beside the tank. Its chute was already extended, pouring a thick, steady stream of gray cement into the opening. 2 workers in hard hats were directing the flow. A third man manned the controls. They all moved quickly, like they were trying to finish before someone could stop them. "Hey, what the hell are you doing? This is my property," I yelled as I sprinted toward them. They looked up, startled guilt flickering across their faces. The older worker raised a hand but didn't stop. "Sorry, buddy, we've got a work order," he called out. "Official business says this is a community safety project authorized by the Millbrook Rural Association. We were told the owner approved it." That's when I saw her, Deborah, standing beside her spotless white SUV just outside my property line, watching like the director of a documentary. She was wearing a safety vest and a hard hat so clean it looked fresh from an Amazon box, and she was filming the whole thing like she was submitting it to Netflix, not emergency services. I stormed toward her. "Deborah, you can't do this. This is my land." She glanced up like she'd just noticed me for the first time. "Mr. Barnes, I tried to work with you, but you refused to take action to ensure community safety. As president of the Millbrook Rural Association, I am authorized to take emergency measures when property owners fail to act." "Authorized by who? Where's the permit?" She handed me a folder thick with paperwork, official-looking forms, safety certifications, stamped documents, all bearing the logo of her imaginary HOA and her looping signature. I called 911. Deputy Williams arrived 20 minutes later, already looking like he regretted being the one dispatched to this mess. Deborah met him with practiced confidence, guiding him through her binder of evidence. "Deborah, we're dealing with a serious safety concern. Mr. Barnes has refused to remediate a contaminated water facility that poses a risk to the community. We had no choice but to act." When the deputy asked for my side, I tried to explain what was really happening, but I could tell my words felt flimsy compared to her bureaucratic theater. To him, it looked like a civil dispute, vandalism in the form of a construction project. His advice: take it up through legal channels. By the time the truck was done, the tank was completely filled. The surface of the concrete sat flush with the rim flat. Final. The older contractor approached me sheepishly. "Look, man, we're just hired help." She showed us the paperwork. It all looked legit. She paid up front. Then they drove off, taking the last of my water system with them. Deborah strutted over and handed me a manila envelope like she was delivering an invoice for a landscaping job. "Mr. Barnes, the association has acted with swift and professional resolve," she said with a proud smile. "Your invoice for emergency safety services. Payment due in 30 days. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. $6,500. Itemized under terms like hazard mitigation, emergency response coordination, and administrative oversight. "You're insane if you think I'm paying this," I said, barely able to keep my voice steady. Deborah gave me that practiced, patronizing smile. "The association has invested significant resources in protecting the community from your negligence. We expect reimbursement. That's how professional organizations operate." She turned to leave, calling over her shoulder, "You should probably consult an attorney. Community safety isn't free, and neither are the consequences for ignoring it." She drove away, leaving me in my backyard, staring at a concrete tomb where my water system used to be. And somehow, that wasn't the worst part. That evening, I saw Frank Davis walking slowly across the field that separated our properties. His expression looked like he was about to deliver a eulogy. "Wade," he said, stopping at the edge of my yard, "I need to talk to you. That tank, it wasn't just yours to lose. You have no idea what this means for the community." I stared at him. "Frank, what are you talking about? It's just an old irrigation tank, right?" Frank's weathered hands were folded behind his back, his eyes fixed on the gray surface like it was a headstone. "That tank," he said quietly, "was the water source for 12 homes in this valley, mine included. It wasn't just concrete she poured, it was the end of a lifeline." I froze. "That's impossible." But even as I said it, memories started surfacing. The web of pipes I'd found during my garden planning, Frank's strange warnings, the way people reacted when I mentioned removing the tank. If it supplies water to other houses, why isn't it documented in my deed? Why didn't anyone tell me? Frank gave a heavy sigh and sat down on a tree stump nearby, suddenly looking older than I'd ever seen him. "Back in '65, the wells dried up, all but one, Tom Miller's. He built that tank and ran plumbing to every house that needed water. People paid a monthly fee. When Tom passed, his son kept it going. Then the grandkids, they never bothered with lawyers or paperwork, just handshakes and trust. Neighbors helping neighbors." I swallowed hard. "But I've never gotten payments from anyone." Frank raised his eyebrows. "You've been getting $50 checks every month, haven't you?" I thought they were hay subsidies or co-op fees. Turns out I'd been unknowingly running a rural water utility and cashing the checks like a clueless landlord. "Frank, how long before people run out of water?" He didn't hesitate. "Maybe 48 hours if they ration, but with the heat. This summer, folks have been using more gardens, livestock, some might already be running low." Then he said something that made my blood run cold. Deborah drank from that system too, paid for it monthly. She knew exactly what she was doing. It hit me like a punch to the chest. This wasn't about tanks, or weeds, or made-up community codes. She was willing to cut off clean water for children, families, elderly neighbors, all to gain leverage. I looked at Frank, my voice hoarse. Why would she do this? What could possibly be worth it? He gave me a grim look. 3 years ago, Deborah had big dreams, a retreat center, spa, yoga, barns, the whole deal. She wanted to buy this land, but the financing fell through. You bought it instead. Ever since, she's been trying to get it back. I think this is her plan B. The evidence was undeniable now. What Deborah couldn't buy, she tried to bully into submission. First came the letters, then the violations, then the concrete. This wasn't community enforcement, it was real estate warfare. Frank nodded grimly. "I think she figured if she caused enough chaos, maybe even got you into legal trouble over the water, eventually you'd throw in the towel and sell cheap. Then she could swoop in, buy this place for pennies, and build her precious wellness retreat, with the water supply as the crown jewel for her guests." The cold calculation of it took my breath away. Deborah had been willing to deprive a dozen families of drinking water. She'd lied to contractors, forged documents, claimed fake authority, all for a land grab that benefited no one but herself. I'd only lived here 6 months, but the betrayal felt deeply personal. These were her neighbors, people who had trusted her, and she weaponized that trust for her own agenda. Frank, we have to tell people what's really going on, I said. They need to know Deborah deliberately destroyed their water supply as part of a business scheme. Frank's face darkened. That's going to be harder than you think, he said, while I was scrubbing dried concrete off my boots. Deborah had been on the phone, spinning her version of events. According to her, I'd poisoned the water. Ignored, repeated safety warnings, triggered a public emergency through reckless behavior. People don't know what actually happened, Frank said. They just know their faucets are slowing to a trickle and Deborah's telling them it's your fault. A chill crawled up my spine. You're saying people actually think I caused this? Frank gave a slow, heavy nod. She's been working the phones non-stop, telling anyone who'll listen that you refused to cooperate, ignored officials, and contaminated the system. She's painting herself as the hero who tried to save everyone and you as the outsider who broke it all. Right then, my phone rang. The first caller didn't even introduce themselves, just launched into accusations. Is this Wade Barnes? I want to know what you're going to do about the fact that my kids don't have clean water to drink tonight, because of your selfish, reckless behavior. Before I could speak, the line went dead. Then came another, and another. Angry parents. Threats of lawsuits, people demanding answers and compensation. And threaded through every call was Deborah's language phrases like ignored community safety protocols and refused to comply with legitimate authorities. She had fed the valley a poison narrative and it was working. Frank stayed by my side through the storm of calls. Sometimes he took the phone himself, calmly telling people there was more to the story. But I could see it in his face. Deborah had struck first, and hard. She got there first with a clean, scary lie, he said quietly. Ours is messy and true, but fear beats fact when the taps run dry. By 9 p.m. the phone finally went silent. I was left feeling crushed. Deborah hadn't just ruined my property, she'd turned me into the villain of my own story. The people of Millbrook Valley were going to bed thirsty, and they thought it was my fault. How do you change the ending? I asked Frank, when the movie's already playing in everyone's head. He stared at the concrete-filled tank, silent for a long moment. Then, finally, Wade. There's something I haven't told you, something that might change everything. But first I need you to promise something. If we do this, if we fight this, we fight it all the way. Deborah's not going to back down just because she's been exposed. She's dangerous. Are you ready for things to get worse before they get better? I looked at the broken tank, thought of the families already running dry, then nodded. Frank, I'm ready. What do you know? He pulled out his phone, looked me dead in the eye and said, 4 words. Wade, I got it all. Lightning in the dark. He had video. I was checking the fence when I saw the concrete truck, he explained. Something felt off, so I started recording, from behind the oaks. She didn't see me. The footage was a little grainy, but the audio crystal clear. Deborah's voice, unmistakable, giving direct instructions to the workers. Fill it completely, she said. The property owner has refused to cooperate. The Millbrook Rural Association is taking emergency action. My jaw clenched. Frank, this is everything. She's caught in the act, lying, fabricating authority, destroying the tank. Frank nodded. It's strong evidence, but not enough alone. Deborah's clever. She have rehearsed answers. She's been planning this. Then we get more, I said. Every fake rule, every forged document, every lie. We show the entire timeline. We show everyone, Frank agreed. But time was tight. People will be out of water by tomorrow. If we don't act now, we don't just lose the truth, we lose the community. We spent the night building our case. We called an emergency meeting for all affected families. I compiled every email, every fake policy, every made-up violation. We organized the timeline from letters, to threats, to destruction. Frank and I personally called every household. Some were angry, others skeptical, but most agreed to attend. Frank's name still carried weight. The next night, 11 of 12 households showed up. Deborah's was the only one missing. The meeting began, with Frank's quiet but powerful introduction. I've lived in Millbrook Valley for 38 years, he said, seen my share of neighbor feuds, but this isn't that. Someone lied to us, someone put our families at risk. And Wade Barnes didn't do it. Then I walked them through everything, from Deborah's first contact with me to her fake citations, her false credentials, her fabricated HOA. I showed her escalation step by step, or leading to one illegal act, the destruction of the tank. Then we played the video. Her voice filled the room, commanding the workers, faking her role, lying about authority. The silence afterward was deafening. Finally, Martha Henderson spoke up, voice trembling. Are you saying Deborah knew this would destroy our water supply, that she did it on purpose? I'm saying exactly that, I replied. Then came the final blow. Planning documents, filed by Deborah 3 years earlier, for a Millbrook Valley Wellness and Retreat Center on my property, in her own handwriting. The brochure promised exclusive access to a pristine private spring water system. The room exploded. Anger, shock, betrayal. One mother stood up, eyes wet with fury. My kids haven't bathed properly in 2 days because I was scared the tap water was poisoned, and it was her the whole time. By meeting's end, the community stood united. They voted to take legal action to restore the system and to manage it together under a properly registered, transparent association that his neighbors filed out. Many stopped to apologize. Martha shook my hand and said, "That woman fooled all of us, but she picked the wrong community to mess with. And that includes you now, Wade." Even as relief washed over me, Frank cautioned, "Don't celebrate yet. Tomorrow." She hit back hard. She did. Emails flooded in complaints from 3 fake organizations, but that time, luck was on our side. Inspector Sarah Chen from the county arrived. She raised an eyebrow after reviewing the complaints. 3 different agencies filed reports, same wording, same letterheads, but none of these groups exist. When I told her everything, showed her Frank's video, Deborah's forged paperwork. The community meeting, she listened closely, then called the sheriff. 2 deputies showed up. After an hour of reviewing the evidence, they weren't just interested, they were building a case. Fraud, property destruction, false reports, attempted real estate manipulation. Deborah had practically indicted herself. Her files were absurdly detailed, complete with fake meeting minutes, fake bio, and even a document titled Wellness and Land Grab. Within days, she was arrested. Civil suits followed. 11 families demanded damages. The contractors offered to rebuild the tank for free in exchange for immunity. Frank and I led the charge to rebuild the system this time. Better, stronger, community-run, transparent, accountable, Martha suggested. The name, the community, Truth and Transparency Water Cooperative. And we all agreed. Deborah, she took a plea deal, full restitution, over $40,000 in damages, mandatory community service, and one final condition. She had to leave Nebraska permanently. I saw her one last time at the courthouse. She looked smaller, not physically but in the way a lie looks when sunlight hits it. She didn't speak, just walked past me, head down. 6 months later, I stood beside our new water tank, watching Frank's grandson test the filtration system. 13 homes now shared clean, safe water, including a young couple who just bought Deborah's old property. The system worked beautifully. So did the garden I'd started when this all began. Wildflowers bloomed, bees and birds returned. My native planting was thriving, so was the community. Frank often says, if she'd just been honest, maybe it all could have worked out. He's probably right. In the end, Deborah's downfall wasn't bad luck. It was inevitability. When you build a kingdom of lies, it only takes one true story to bring it all down. People sometimes ask how I knew to fight back, how I stood up to someone so seemingly official. The truth is simple. I trusted my gut. I asked for help. And I remembered that real authority doesn't need clipboards, threats, or fake regulations. It just needs truth, and people willing to stand together for it. That's a wrap from Rise Fuel. But stay close, because the next time someone tries to fake their way into power, we'll be here to help shine a light. At Rise Fuel, we believe stories like this matter not just because they entertain, but because they remind us that real courage often looks quiet, steady, and deeply rooted in community. Whether you're facing down bullies in boardrooms or backyards, remember, truth is stronger than threats, and when people rise together, they cannot be silenced. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep your eyes open, your backbone strong, and your story fueled by what's right. This is Rise Fuel. Also, DONT. Forget to like, share, and subscribe for this type of content.